Hey, I'm Kai, and today I'm checking out the Universal Audio Heavenly Plate Reverb pedal. They've recently placed pretty much all of their budget pedals on a deep discount, down from about £165 to £95 or so, at least here in the UK, and the Heavenly Plate was the one that spoke out to me the most. I have no idea if this is an end-of-life style discount, if something new is coming, if this is just a major blowout sale thing, or if it's a new price adjustment. I'm keen to get stuck into the Heavenly Plate though, so I will drop a quick clip before we get into the overview section of this video. The Heavenly Plate takes the algorithms from Universal Audio's bigger pedal, the Golden Reverberator, and instead splits it into just the plate algorithms. There is also the Evermore pedal available, which I believe is just the Hall reverb algorithms from that same Golden Reverberator. In this one you have a bright vintage plate, a dark vintage plate, as well as a more modern plate sound, and I'll get into all of the different modes later on in the video. As expected for a reverb pedal, we have a decay knob which controls the length of time that the reverb will decay for, as well as an overall mix control that controls how wet the signal is. Also, a feature that's pretty common on a lot of reverb pedals is this pre-delay knob. This gives you a little bit of a delay between you playing and the reverb kicking in, which can be really good for stopping your signal from getting too muddy. The EQ control on the Heavenly Plate Reverb is, in my opinion, the best way to do it. It's a tilt style EQ. If you turn it to the left, it increases the bass and drops off some of the highs, and if you turn it to the right, it increases the highs and drops some of the bass. This makes it super powerful, super extreme, and incredibly fast to dial in. On this we also have a modulation depth control with the speed available by the switch on the back of the unit. The switch on the back only lets you choose between a fast modulation or a slow modulation, but for a reverb pedal like this, I think that's all you need control over. Also on the back of the unit is another switch worth mentioning. This lets you turn the trails on or off. With the trails off, when you turn off the pedal, it will cut your reverb signal short. However, if you leave the trails on, turning off the pedal, it will continue to decay naturally. It is worth mentioning that unlike the Golden Reverberator pedal, the Heavenly Plate is mono operation only. I'll try and blast through a quick run through of what the pedal is and what it does, how it all works and that sort of thing, before I run it through a bunch of different tones that I've got set up in my Fractal FM3. I have also set up my patch in the FM3 in a way that allows me to compare the reverb in the Fractal to the reverb pedal. I'll start on a clean combo sort of tone for this, so I'm going for a Fender model in the Fractal. The first thing I want to show is the difference between the three reverb algorithms available in the unit. Now the best way to show this would obviously be to have the mix all the way up so you're just hearing the reverb signal, however that does sound a little bit weird, so we'll back it off just a touch. For now the EQ is set flat, the pre-delay and the modulation are both turned all the way down to 0, so this is really just the raw reverb sound. The first mode is Vintage Dark, the second mode is Vintage Bright, and the third mode is Modern. So I'm not really liking the modern plate sound too much. It's got quite a lot of low end to it. However, I really do like it in the middle position here. This is the Vintage Bright mode and it does sound super smooth, really nice, pretty much exactly what I'd expect to hear of a plate reverb. I'll now show off the full range of the EQ knob just so that you know what we're working with here. It's very extreme. I personally like this one pulled back to be just a little bit darker so that it sits behind the guitar and doesn't cut through quite as much. I'll now show the full range of the pre-delay knob, however this does get quite hard to play to with the mix up high as it turns into a sort of speech jammer effect. I quite like this one up at around 9 o'clock or so. It's just enough that it separates the reverb signal from your guitar and not so much that it starts to sound disjointed. Let's pull the mix down a bit for a more normal sounding reverb and then push the decay up to try and get a nice pad sound. It doesn't go super ambient, but we can add a little touch of magic to it if we turn up the modulation control. I like it. It's a fairly subtle modulation. You can kind of hear that it's going on, but it's not like an extreme chorusy sort of effect. Rather than running through the entire pedal again for each of these tones, I'm going to do one short decay tone and one long decay tone for each of these different patches I've got set up in the Fractal. The first one is going to be a crunch sort of tone. For the short decay tone here, I want to do something that just pulls the guitar forward a little bit without getting too much in the way. While this pedal doesn't go fully ethereal, I will try and do a more ambient sort of thing with this crunch tone, just to add something behind the guitars and fill them out a little bit. I also want to get into some lead tones, so let's switch over to that patch now. This is a 6505 model in the Fractal with a little bit of delay after the amp. For the short decay, I'd like to have something bright and pretty cutting that lets me play fast without getting too much in the way of what I'm playing. For the longer reverb here, I actually want to turn up the modulation control and get something pretty crazy sounding. Personally, the main tone I would find myself adding reverb over is something pretty fuzzy sounding. It's quite nice just to fill the sound out a bit. On a short decay, this is a place where I'd like to have the pre-delay up pretty high so that the guitar can really shine through. Now that may have been a little bit too subtle to hear, but here's what it sounds like without the reverb, just for comparison's sake. So as expected, the reverb just adds a little bit of something behind the tone. If I were to set up a longer decay reverb on this sort of fuzzy tone, I'd want something pretty high in the mix, something pretty modulated, and generally pretty wild sounding. Let's now hear an A/B comparison between the Heavenly Plate and the Fractal FM3's plate reverb. One thing I should probably mention here is that the Fractal reverb has about a million different settings that you can tweak, so I've left everything basically at stock. It would also be unfair to put the Fractal reverb in stereo, as the Heavenly Plate is only mono, so the Fractal reverb will be in mono for this demo. The first one you'll hear will be the Heavenly Plate, then we'll move over to the Fractal reverb after. I'll do a few tests. This is test number 1. Now test number 2. Finally, test number 3 is just going to be a short, snappy sort of thing. I'll be honest, I can't hear a ton of difference between the two. It sounds like the Fractal may have something going on in these sort of lower mids of the reverb, but ultimately I could pick either of these and be completely happy. This does mean that I don't think I'd recommend picking up the Heavenly Plate as an add-on to the Fractal, but the Fractal reverbs are so high quality, world-class reverbs that was always going to be a tough hill to beat. Now onto the conclusion of this video, and I should mention first and foremost, this is not a sponsored video. I purchased this pedal secondhand with my own money. I'd like to mention that the mono operation of this pedal is something of a letdown, especially when the golden reverberator is stereo. This means that they sort of artificially neutered this pedal and made it mono operation so that you'd want to get the golden reverberator instead, which I can kind of see from a business perspective, but to make it so transparent makes it kind of difficult to warrant picking up this one. Ultimately, I'm not too fussed about stereo operation itself, as it's not something I use all of the time. It's just sad not to see it on this unit. However, this pedal will likely be living on my pedal board where I only ever run in mono anyway, so it's not going to be too much of an issue for me in my setup. Since this pedal only really covers plate reverb tones, it's not going to be the most versatile pedal on the planet, but you know, if you're looking into this, you probably already expected that to be the case. You can't do quick room style reverbs or tile or slapback, things like that, and you also can't do great big ambient pads too well. This is more like a staple studio reverb. This is something that you may want to have as your always on pedal, just to add a little bit of life to your guitar. The different reverb algorithms in this can be a little bit difficult to discern between, especially when you've got the mix fairly low. If you've got it all the way up, you can kind of hear them, but it's still fairly subtle. Especially the difference between the vintage dark and the vintage bright. When you've got the EQ control to switch between a bright sound and a dark sound anyway, it doesn't make that much of a difference to change the algorithm. With this pedal currently being on sale, there is a much bigger gulf between this and the Golden Reverberator, for instance, making something like the Heavenly Plate a much easier thing to swallow. It does also make it quite difficult to choose whether you want to go for this one or save up for the full-size unit. Personally, I only really use reverbs like this just to fill the sound out every now and again. If I want a great big ambient pad sort of thing, I use my Line 6 HX1, which is my something of everything sort of pedal. For this sort of thing, I have been using the Mua R7 X2 reverb for the absolute longest time, probably going on about 3 years with it now, and the plate reverb algorithm in that is pretty good, but not quite as good as the Heavenly Plate pedal. I really like the EQ controls this one has available, and also the modulation settings are really nice just to make things a little bit more lo-fi feeling. That is everything that I've got for this video, so thank you ever so much for checking out the Universal Audio Heavenly Plate with me. Drop a comment down below letting me know what you think of it. I will also leave affiliate links in both the description and in the comment section if you'd like to purchase one of these for yourself while they're still on sale. That's all for this one though, so thank you for watching. I've been Kai.